Well, welcome all. And we're going to be talking about a favorite topic of mine, which is contact center reporting and contact center performance management. For as long as I've been working in contact centers, and as Jim just pointed out, it's close to 30 years, one of the top complaints of managers has been about the lack of reporting, or just downright really bad reporting. Lack of good and useful information and the data needed to manage contact center agents and the department overall remains a top issue for contact centers, large and small, all over the world. Now, as you can see on the slide, Peter F. Drucker, who is a well-known management consultant, pointed out years ago the obvious, which is that you can't manage what you don't measure. Now, the frustration of contact center managers all over the world is that despite all the systems and data that they receive, or maybe because of it, they don't have a holistic view of what's happening in their department. Managers often don't know how well their agents are performing. Agents, each person doesn't know how well they're performing. And department managers, more often than not, have no way to measure the overall customer experience. Now, given the maturity of reporting and business intelligence tools and technology today, there's just no excuse for this, but it is the harsh reality in our contact center world. Now, if you look at the next slide, you'll see that contact centers are unique operating environments, and a great deal of what we do in contact center happens in real time. Yet, and this is the real paradigm here, most contact centers have highly limited visibility into the real-time activities. Now, think about this. So these are real-time, right? We build and create real-time departments, yet we have almost no real-time data about what's happening. Now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are three primary modes of reporting. The first is that we have the traditional historical reporting. And this is really very strategic in nature. And what we're doing is we're looking at things on a next day, next week, monthly basis, quarterly basis, whatever it happens to be. And what we're doing is we're tracking a group of KPIs over a period of time in order to identify big picture trends for the department. And we consider this very strategic information, and we're using this information to help identify where we've got training issues, where we've got big system issues, where we have to modify policies and procedures because our customers tell us in a customer SAT survey, for example, that they really hate certain things that we do. And historical information is critical and something that we need. A lot of shops also have what they call near real-time information, and near real-time information is cut anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes and sometimes even 30 minutes. And where near real-time information came from is, folks like me in the field were pushing and pushing the vendors to deliver real-time. They couldn't deliver real-time, but they did deliver it in near real-time. And valuable information and stuff that we need. And what it does is it gives management, gives your team leaders, and sometimes agents information that we can use to change not happens on the current interaction, but what's going to happen hopefully on the next. So, we may identify that we have a coaching opportunity. We may identify that we need to remind our agents to adhere to schedules. We may decide, based on what we're seeing in intraday, for example, on the WFM side, that, we have to cancel all of our coaching or training sessions. So near real-time information is also important. We want both. But we really want real-time information. And real-time information is data that we receive about exactly what's happening here and now. So, it's giving your agents the information so they can self-manage. For example, I talk to a lot of agents, talk to them all the time. And one of their frustrations is, when they hear on next day or even worse, next week basis that they missed their goals for the week or for the day, depending on when they get the information. And these are people, agents in general really do want to meet the goals of the organization. And if you give them the information so they can self-manage, it will empower them to really change how it is they perform, and really will have a superb impact on your shop. Now, we can use real-time information. Let's say we're using real-time speech analytics. We can use it to identify when conversations are going south, as they say, to diffuse difficult situations. We can use it to increase revenue. We can use it to speed up call handling. There's a lot of different things that we can do, but it's most powerful is when we give it to our reps. Now, if you look at the next slide, we have reporting data, which we just discussed. And now we also have something that we call CCPM, Contact Center Performance Management. And there's some people who look at CCPM and they say, it's reporting on steroids. Now, the reality is it should be reporting on steroids. I mean, you should be able to get some superb reports out of a Contact Center Performance Management or CCPM application. Now, but what you see here is what CCPM really should be for you, because it's not just a series of reports. It's an entire framework which is designed to be actionable. So let's just kind of walk through this concept here. I presented as a racetrack because to me it is a little bit of a racetrack. We're racing ourselves, really, if you think about it that way. So when you're doing CCPM, the first thing you need to do is you need to come up with the goals for the department. And you do it for the department, first and foremost. You come up with goals for the enterprise, come up with goals for the agents, or any other level. It could be goals for a campaign, it could be goals for a site, it could be goals for a team. Okay. Once you know what those goals are, then of course you have to find the KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics in order to measure how well you're doing against those goals. So, you know, in today's world, we're always looking at customer experience. We may be looking at customer effort. You know, if you're a collections or sales organization, you're going to look at revenue. If you're a service shop, or in some cases a sales shop, you may be looking at customer retention. Most service shops will still be looking at some form of productivity. It could be FCR, you know, whatever it happens to be. So you know the KPIs. Once you know the KPIs, then you've got to figure out how do you get that information. You know, what source do you go to? So you find your data sources. And keep in mind that some KPIs are just one metric, and some KPIs is a whole formula. So you've got to find the data sources so that you can figure out if you're meeting your goals. Okay. There's a lot of call centers and shops that I'm in which do these 3 steps in some form or another. Now, the next 2 steps is where so many departments fall off, basically. And it's what makes the difference between this information being information and being actionable. What you really want to do is take all the stuff that we talked about and turn it into a balanced scorecard. And that's a scorecard that you can do at many levels. It can be for the enterprise, you know, same thing like goals. It could be the enterprise, the contact center, the site, the team, the agent. You definitely want to have one for your agents. You definitely want to have one for your contact center. You definitely want to have one that ties you into your enterprise. And then any other cuts that you happen to want to do. And what you're doing is you're not just looking at one of the KPIs, but you're taking a healthy, holistic view of what's going on. You're going to look at quality. You're going to look at FCR. You're going to look at customer experience. You're going to look at customer effort. You may look at productivity. And you're going to bring all this together. And based on that information, you're going to be able to determine the right actions to take. You know, the classic example, right, of the agent who has the highest average talk time, the highest. And then what you notice is that this person also has the highest upsell cross-sell rate. Aha, so this isn't somebody we want to fire because for 3 months they've had the highest ATT. This is somebody that we want to use as a, you know, to teach best practices to others. So you need to then be able to use the balanced scorecard to identify your actions, and then since I believe in the real concept of performance management, I think the process should be reviewed, and then you begin it all over again. Now, let's talk about some of the best-of-breed real-time CCPM functionality. And there's 7 that I just want to touch on, and I've really already mentioned a bunch of these. The first thing is when we're talking about performance management, you need to be able to aggregate data from multiple operating systems. So when we do reporting, in most cases, reporting comes out of the one system. When we're doing CCPM, we are absolutely aggregating data from multiple operating systems in order for us to get that holistic view. When we're doing CCPM, real-time CCPM, we need to be able to calculate and generate the right KPIs so that we can identify out-of-compliance situations and notify the right parties that there is an issue. I mean, if you can't let somebody know that there's an issue, then it's information for the sake of information, which honestly isn't worth the screen or the paper it's written on. You need to be able to share data in many formats, and in today's world, mobility is essential. Now, one more piece on this one. There are a lot of call centers that do not share information with their CPM, their corporate performance management, also known as EPM, enterprise performance management, and that is a fatal flaw. If you are one of those shops, then I strongly recommend that you figure out some way of feeding into your enterprise view of the world. And the reason is because if you do not, then from the executive suite perspective, you know, for your CXOs, you basically don't exist. And if you do exist, you're nothing more than a cost. Yes, it can be difficult or time-consuming to be able to feed into this environment, but if you're using a CCPM application, this is one of the uses that you want to do with it. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the top reasons for investing in CCPM applications. And there are 7 that I want to go through. The first is that many shops do not have accurate reports. So you may very well be getting lots of different reports, but unfortunately, the data is incredible. So why isn't it credible? For example, you know, let's assume that one report talks about AHT, average handle time, and another system report talks about AHT, and there's significant differences between the data in the 2 reports. So you really do want to have a system of record. So inaccurate and bad reports is one of the top reasons why organizations invest in CCPM. Now, the second one is just poor reporting technology. And I mentioned at the beginning, there's just no excuse for this. But unfortunately, for some reason in the contact center world, the call center world, so many of these systems have bad and outdated reports. So, for example, it may be that you can't get information on a timely basis. It very likely is that you cannot get consolidated performance data. It's very likely that the reports you're looking at, if they do have any OLAP capabilities, they're going to be really rudimentary, and you're barely able to slice and dice and create the different cuts of the reports that you use. It may be that the reports are just really difficult to use. Lots and lots of information, but just, you know, way too much, and you can't drill down into them. So these are just examples of some of the poor reporting technology that most of us are confronting. Now, the third primary reason to invest in a CCPM is because the reports do not give you useful information. So the classic dozens and dozens of reports, no useful information. It could be that you can't get access to the KPIs that you need, or that you can't get it on a timely basis. So if you look at the next slide, you'll see that the fourth reason is that the data just simply isn't actionable. And so, you know, examples of that is that, you know, the reports just give you information, but they don't tell you what to do with them. And Jim, if you would, can you change it to the next slide? It could be that the reports are not prioritizing the issues that need to be prioritized, or it could be, and this is really clearly a very important issue, that the reports don't give you a balanced view of what's happening. Now, the fifth primary category is that the reports are not providing feedback on a timely basis. And this one's just painful, and it's one that I'm going to revisit. I've already mentioned, and I'm going to mention it again. If we give agents the information that they need, then they will be very happy to self-manage. We just have to make sure that we do give them the information that they need. So critically important to work with a real-time performance management application that is able to deliver real-time data, not just to the supervisor, not just to the manager, but also to the agent. Now, the sixth primary issue is lack of reports for senior management, and I've already mentioned this as well. We need to have good reporting in the contact center, but it is critical for the success of our contact centers for us to share how well we're doing with other parts of the organization. We need senior executives to know that we're doing an excellent job, and we need to tell them that. So we need to have our contact center performance management application tie in to the executive performance management application. And then lastly, and this is a sensitive issue, the question is resources. So lots and lots of departments do not have the right resources to do performance management. If you're a 50-person call center, it doesn't really matter. You're probably going to be doing this with 1 or 2 supervisors. But if you have a couple hundred reps or a couple thousand reps, you're going to want to make sure that you have really experienced analytics resources dedicated to helping you and overseeing your performance management application. So now let's look at the slide called Benefits of CCPM. And this is kind of the why should we be using them. So, you know, we've talked about all the different issues, but why should we be using contact center performance management? And the reason is because it can change the outcome for our customers, it can change the outcome for our contact centers, it can change the perception of the contact center. Now, there's 5 primary reasons, right? It helps us provide an outstanding customer experience, and it does this by giving us the information that helps us improve agent quality, that helps us improve and increase first contact resolution, helps us decrease holds and transfers, things that our customers really, really dislike. It helps us generate revenue by giving us the information that will help us increase sales and upsell and closure rates and identification of new sales opportunities. It helps us retain customers by helping us build loyalty, by helping us to improve the skills of our reps who are dedicated to customer retention. It helps us do some of the classics, which are improve productivity and effectiveness. And, you know, even though we absolutely want to prioritize the customer experience, reducing the customer efforts, delivering an outstanding customer journey, contact centers are people-intensive organizations, and we still have to pay attention to some of the fundamental core capabilities, such as average handle time. We want to make sure that we're able to motivate our reps. We want to make sure that we have pay-per-performance and gamification, all capabilities that are coming out of CCPM. And then, of course, we want to use CCPM to reduce our operating costs. So now I'm going to wrap up with the last slide. And this is a decision framework about, is real-time CCPM right for your contact center? And there are 12 items on this list, and I'm just going to talk through a couple of them. And if you say yes to at least 8 of these, then you really do want to consider acquiring a real-time CCPM application, because it will make a significant contribution to your operating environment. So, you know, think about the following. Do you have access to the KPIs that you need in real time to ensure that you're meeting your goals? Because if you can do it in real time, right, then you're going to be doing it on a historical basis. If you look at number 3 here, do you know when the abandonment rate is higher than planned? And sure, you know on the next day basis, but do you know as it's happening so that you can make the changes? If you look at number 6, do you know immediately when your self-service applications aren't working? And yes, you will know over time, but wouldn't it be nice to know right as it's happening so that you can fix it right as it's happening? Number 8, do you know when there's some kind of new business issue that's cropped up that's totally unexpected and very likely was the result either of something a competitor did or your own marketing department, or for that matter, a billing system that wasn't working properly? You need to be able to get this information on a very timely basis so that you can make the changes that you need. And lastly, keep in mind we're in the era of social media, and in this era, the contact centers, if you're not already responsible for social media, over time you will be. But do you have some type of early warning mechanism, automated early warning system, so when you are at risk of an issue going viral, that you know about it? These are just some of the reasons why organizations absolutely need to have a real-time CCPM application. So with that, I want to thank you, and I want to pass the call back to Jim.
Great, thanks, Donna. That was a great overview about CCPM and how it's different from reporting and its benefits. And we are going to do some Q&A, folks, at the end. But before that, I just wanted to go through some of the best practice steps and considerations for implementing a real-time performance management solution. Donna started off the presentation by citing Peter Drucker. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I'd like to take that just one step further and add that in order to measure it, you first need to see it. And as Donna discussed, using real-time data is critically important to improve our agent and contact center performance. And in order to use that data, you've got to share it with the right people when they need to see it and the way they want to see it. So whether that's on a tablet dashboard or a mobile device or even a digital sign or wall board so they can take immediate action and make the necessary adjustments. But visualizing that data, sharing that data, having it deliver positive results is really a result of some upfront planning. So before we decide to invest and deploy a real-time performance management solution, we suggest that you go through the following steps. So thinking about our goals quite naturally, as Donna said, we want to clearly identify what those are and why we want to share that data in the first place. Again, is your goal to help your team stay focused on the customer experience and improve customer satisfaction scores? Are you looking to maintain a consistent service level and meet your goals in that area without having to chase it all day? Are you looking to have your agents be more engaged and better equipped to serve customers and self-manage? Or are you looking to foster maybe a little competition between teams and groups of agents? Or are you looking to lower costs through better efficiencies or perhaps increase your staff's productivity, in terms of meeting revenue or customer service goals? So likely it's, for several of these reasons that you'll be considering a solution, but you definitely want to be clear so that you can both build the right solution and measure the resulting benefits. So one thing you want to take a look at too as a good next step is your what we refer to as environmental markers. Really understanding the type of environment that your contact center is operating under now, and if necessary, what kind of environment you want to support going forward. So in taking a look at your markers as a next step, you want to think about how driven you are to objectives today. Is it that there are no objectives in place now, or maybe just a few and the little that there are, or maybe just more than suggestions at this point? Or really do you operate under the rules that, numbers really rule the day and nothing else matters? How do you view qualitative measures? Is hard data all that matters? Call volume, calls per hour, handle time, those kind of metrics? Or are you more focused on the softer, more customer-focused measures like CSAT and quality scores and NPS scores? How much planning and analysis do you currently do? Do you take the approach of whatever will be, and we can just react to it when it happens? Or is it more that nothing should be unexpected and we plan for everything and every number gets analyzed? And then lastly, how engaged is your staff? Do you say to your staff, your job is to answer the phone and we'll do the thinking around here? Or do you tell them more that quality is everyone's job and it's your job and your input matters? And I think it's safe to say that most everyone listening to the webcast is probably closer to the second example of each marker, but it is important to know where you fall within each marker so that you can make the necessary adjustments concerning your environment and culture. It's really a critical step. And then as far as real-time data itself, what really needs to be in real time and how should it be presented? Basically, we think about real-time data sort of in two buckets. One is the, what's going on right now. The call volume. Are we queuing? How many calls are waiting? What's the longest call waiting? How many agents are available? Those kinds of KPIs that are, very critical to the customer experience, and we need to know what they are at all times so that we can take the appropriate measures immediately if you're too high or too low in one of those areas. Then there's the information that is more what we would call cumulative right now. So things like service level, average speed of answer, abandoned calls, and percentages. This kind of data is still very important to share in real time so that we can make the adjustments in order to meet our daily objectives, versus realizing perhaps that service level has been under goal for the last, 4 straight intervals, and now we've got to spend the rest of our day and resources trying to catch up. So they're both very critical to be seen in real time, but, some things you need to know right now, and some you need to be able to see sort of where you are against your goals of the day right now. And then there's the contextual aspects. And so real-time data is valuable on its own, but putting it in context of, say, as basic as a threshold, current results to an action marker. For example, very basically, once call volume hits a certain level, we send an alert, and when quality reaches a certain level, we reduce the sample size. Things like that. Just putting it in context of a simple threshold is beneficial. Or trending, comparing results to past interval averages. For example, the call volume at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday is X, but what does that look like compared to call volume on the average for the last 6 Tuesdays at 2:30? That'd be a nice thing to be able to see. Comparative, comparing current results to another team or another region, for example. Putting your call metrics in context with objectives, comparing that to your current results to your predetermined goals. And then lastly, putting your call data in context of business data. So relating call data to revenue, your cost and your revenue per call, your cost and your revenue per agent. Those are all things you can do to put give your contact center metrics more meaning. So on the next slide, I won't go through all of these, but kind of the way we help our customers think through what metrics, during the metric selection phase they should think about. And so I think an easy way to do that is sort of bucket them against what your goals are. So for example, if you're looking for more of the customer focus type of metrics, you might be looking at CSAT scores and holds and transfer percentages. Efficiency, you might want to look at your shrinkage numbers, queue volume. Productivity, you may be looking at total calls handled or total sales from a productivity standpoint. Or logistical, of course, we want to know where everybody is and what they're doing, so agent states, occupancy rates, things like that. And another good way to look at that is think about where the metrics themselves will come from. So what systems will the metrics be coming from? And as Donna discussed, this is really key to be able to bring all these things together into a single view to make life easier. So, from the ACD and the dialer, we're talking about the contact volume, whether it's voice or chat or email, service level, promise to pay perhaps from the dialer. CRM, and we do get a lot of customers who integrate their CRM into their dashboards and their wallboards, so, bringing in things like percent of sales to goals and open and closed cases, very valuable to see from a team perspective. Thinking about the workforce management system and the quality monitoring recordings, so things like, agent schedule adherence, quality assurance compliance, things like that. And of course, social media, if you've got a separate social media platform, metrics like applicable volume, social mentions of your company, what's applicable, what's not, and average resolution time. Metrics like that are always good. But the important thing really is to bring those two together, or bring all of those together rather. And then as Donna talked about earlier, bringing together the relationship between those, she cited, handle time versus productivity measures. So you want to think about that as well. Of course, one of the things you're going to want to do is think about the audience that will consume the data that you'll be sharing. So everyone's going to see a different view of the world, and they're all going to want to see it in different ways. With your agents, your single agents, what do they need to see? How do they want to see it? Are they at home, or are they in a physical center? And what kind of software do they already have on their desktops? All of these will be factors in deciding how to best share data with that group. Or is it a team of agents that you're sharing data with? They're a central viewing display, some sort of HD TV monitor or wallboard would be a great option. Supervisors and managers, they're going to want to see a slightly different set of metrics that may include trending and agent status, agent state, forecast accuracy, things like that would be different than what the agents would see. And for them, it may be more of a dashboard view or a tablet view or a mobile device so that they can stay both mobile when they're in the center and then also be aware of conditions once they're out of the center. And then executives, they don't really need to see the real-time data, the right now stuff anyway, but they certainly want to be able to check in periodically to see where the contact center stands relative to today's goals. And as Donna mentioned, you want to make sure that your data is actionable. So when a metric becomes out of compliance, people, they need to know about it. And they not only need to know about it, but they need to know what to do about it or be able to communicate to their team what action needs to be taken. So this can really be done by setting up very structured response plans, and as part of those response plans, setting up pre-programmed or the ability to at least send ad hoc type of instructional messages, for example. And in some cases, the data coming out of your real-time performance management solution may be able to kick off another system. For example, an intraday management system that may automatically adjust schedules or alert agents to allow them to make changes to their schedule. Those things are possible as well, so you want to think about that potential relationship if you've got a system that can be fed by real-time data to do its thing. And then, of course, you don't want to, and maybe this should be one of the first slides, but you want to think about your delivery options. So, whether you're going to purchase a license or right to use license and have something on-prem, or whether you're going to, rent the solution in a subscription model, deliver from the cloud. Of course, each one of those has its advantages, and you want to consider all of your options, including, a hybrid model, especially if you're planning to gather data from both cloud and premises-based applications, or if, you wanted to bring in maybe some cloud ACD seats for a holiday season or something like that, and you want to keep your reporting whole. So you want to make sure that you consider all of your delivery options. And then lastly, when you're looking for a vendor, you just want to be sure that they are focused on the contact center, that they've got the proper qualifications and partnerships and certifications, and they can really help you think through a solution from determining what metrics to implementation through support. So you just want to be sure they can be with you every step of the way, and certainly at least if they don't have cloud on the roadmap, they're certainly thinking about that to migrate with you. So those are the steps that we take, that we recommend you take and we take with our customers. And that wraps my portion of the presentation. So what I'd like to do now, Donna, is go through some of the questions that we have, and we do have a couple that have come in. And so I will unmute you, Donna. Sorry about that. Donna, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can. So we had one question come in, Donna. The first one says, well, it's asking what some of the names of these applications are.
What are some of the names of these applications?
The name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Ccpm solutions are sold by many different types of vendors. They're sold by standalone vendors like Anova. They're sold by vendors like the big ACD vendors. They're sold by WFM vendors. They're sold by some coaching and learning vendors. They're sold by some of the QA vendors. Is that what you mean?
I think so. We can't interact with Mr. Baker, but I think that probably hits to what he was asking. And certainly, if we'd like to follow up after the session, we can maybe get into that a little bit more. The second question, Donna, here is how do you, sort of a two-part question here, how do you balance metrics with employee morale and engagement? And second part, how do you monitor and manage social media trends? Okay,
well, two really great questions, and I'm going to write down the second one, social media trends. And the first question is, how do you balance metrics?
How do you balance metrics with employee morale and engagement?
Okay. Well, let's kind of take a big picture view of this one. Employees and reps in particular, agents, are really dedicated in general to doing an outstanding job. And more often than not, we, the managers, aren't necessarily giving them all the tools, right, that they need. That's a lot of what this whole conversation today or presentation today is all about, which is giving our reps the tools. And what we want to do is give them tools that engage them. People like to know how well they're doing. And on the other side of that, it's really frustrating when you tell somebody during an annual review that they haven't done a great job all year, right? or even just during a QA session that, they've been missing the same point over and over. And people are very interested, reps, managers, supervisors, anyone, in real-time information that allows them to actively or more actively engage with the operating environment, and basically it self-motivates them and gives them the tools to self-manage. So real-time CCPM is a critical employee engagement tool, and studies have actually shown that to be the case. Jim, you want to add to that?
Sorry, Donna, you can't have one without the other. We definitely find that the fact that we are making the presenting data to the agents and making them quote unquote smarter, not only by looking at some of the traditional metrics, but also bringing in enterprise data, for example, things that are happening operationally within their enterprise that they need to know about. For example, we work with some utility companies where they measure power outages and water pressure in a water treatment plant, things like that agents need to know about, so that they are aware of what kind of calls and the amount of calls they may be receiving. So certainly we think that the fact that you're sharing data and sharing important data, informational data, is really going to get them more engaged.
Yeah, and actually it goes on from there. So there's the real-time operating environment, which actually will tie us back into the social media trends question in a second. Then there's the agent performance data, but then there's another piece to it in today's world. So we're all hearing quite a bit about gamification. At least probably a lot of you on the telephone have heard about gamification. We're hearing about pay for performance, right? That's an ongoing thing. But what we're also seeing shops do is performance management applications are being used to gather the information needed for pay for performance, gather the information needed for gamification environments, which is another really effective way, of course, depending on the gamification solution and what the rewards are of engaging and motivating our staff.
Okay, thank you, Donna. We have another question that came in that says, the question is, what would be the advantage of purchasing a CCPM system from a standalone vendor like Anova rather than a workforce optimization vendor?
Okay, well, that's a...
If you want me to...
Yeah, why don't you try that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's for that I would say that certainly with the workforce optimization vendors, with their suites, they do offer a performance management package that's pretty comprehensive. It's got probably a lot of what you're looking for. I would say that if you're looking for just the real-time data, just looking to do the aggregation of multiple data sources, for example, pulling in multiple data sources would be a big advantage to a standalone vendor. Doing the dedicated dashboards, digital displays, things like that. I think those would be some of the reasons you might want to look at a standalone vendor, although, what the workforce optimization vendors provide is pretty substantial. And you may find some things about their real-time that may not be as real-time as you would like. And so we often work with workforce optimization vendors, matter of fact, to sort of fill some of the holes they have. And likewise, we'll pull in the metrics from their systems to our systems. So it's actually, they work well together as well at times. And so I think hopefully that helped to answer your question. There are advantages to each, and at times they do work well together. And then I had one other question here about what are some of the technical considerations. The person says she has a client who works with outsourcers, and so technically it all sort of depends on what the data source is. The data source connection can be anything from a web services API to something that's maybe a certified API that's on premises, or it's done through ODBC or an XML. It could be, there are a number of different technical considerations. You want to think about the operating environment as well and what it's based on. There's not much that we or most vendors probably couldn't deal with or connect to in a particular environment, but I'd probably have to get some more details about that. But certainly things you want to know as you advise your clients. So I think that was Stephanie. Stephanie, if you want to reach out to us after the call, we can get one of our more technical folks on the phone and take you through that. But I do thank you for the question. Donna, I've got one last one here that talks about the how do I go about building a business case to cost justify an investment in real-time performance management?
Well, that's a really common question that we hear, and what drives it very often is that when people bring up the topic of performance management, their managers may look at them and say, you already have reporting. And this entire webinar was dedicated to helping to differentiate between reports, which goes back to what Peter Drucker said, which is, it's important to have reports because you can't manage what you don't measure, right? And it's very important to be able to measure things. It's a question of how we're measuring that, though, right? So when we get into Ccpm, what we're doing is getting into the world of making results much more actionable. And that's really where the benefits come from. For example, let's assume that the contact center is responsible for managing social media. And the real-time performance management application is used to identify when there's an influx of tweets, when certain types of volumes go up, and send an immediate warning onto, it could be the marketing group, somebody specific, of course, or somebody else. You can see, cause effect. I mean, that's just, I wanted to tie back to that the other part of the question for a second there, but it's that I was answering before. But I mean, that's an example. When you're justifying performance management, I suggest that you look back to I think it was second or third slide, to the slide that has the racetrack on it, and that if you look at the actions, what you want to do is basically quantify what the contributions of Ccpm will be for each of those. So, okay, so if you implement real-time performance management, how much will you be able to reduce your average handle time? How much will you be able to reduce your operating costs? How much will you be able to improve quality? How much will changes in some of your policies and procedures contribute to improving the customer experience and therefore retention and loyalty? So there are really, really, hard dollar savings and benefits and revenue generation that result from using both real-time and, for that matter, historical Ccpm on a continuous basis. Jim, what do you think?
No, I think you've said it all there, Don. I have nothing to add to that. We did have one other question come in. Something about, here it is. Can I just convince my ACD provider to, quote unquote, fix my reports?
If you can, please let me know, because I have been trying to do that for over 30 years. And by the way, it's not a question of fixing their reports. Contact center solutions or call center solutions or ACDs, whatever you want to call them, dialers, these technologies have been out for a long time. And they capture a massive amount of information. And the vendors have to do something with all that information. The vendors have not, as a marketplace, the vendors have not invested a lot in their reporting capabilities for years, and their standard system reports. And it's only in the past couple of years, where literally 2 years, where I've seen as an industry analyst, I follow this very carefully, where I've seen the vendors decide that it's worth their time to improve the user interfaces, to improve the type of reports. The vendors were typically making the trade-off between new functionality or enhanced reports, which is what the issue is. So yes, you can absolutely put a lot of pressure on. The vendors are now, the marketplace overall, we are starting to see some investments. But even if you're going to see investments and improvements in reports coming from your ACD vendors or your WFM vendors or your QA vendors, your recording vendors, or any of these vendors, so even if you see enhancements in these reports, and we are starting to, thank goodness, that's still not CCPM, because what you're getting is information out of one operating system. And when I talk about CCPM, I'm talking about the need, the ability to consolidate and aggregate data from multiple operating systems so that you have the KPIs and metrics that you need. And so, yes, we absolutely hope, and I'm going to continue to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the vendors to improve their systems, but that's still reporting and not CCPM. Jim?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that as well, and just mention that, you know, most of the manufacturers, all the manufacturers have an ecosystem for a reason, I guess. And so it's to work with vendors like us to improve what they have and to add value to their stack. And so we're careful to ensure that we are bringing added value to each one of the manufacturers we connect with. And I would say that, you know, Donna, it's the same thing is happening in the cloud as far as, you know, trying to get to those, you know, bettering those real-time reports, maybe a little bit more accelerated than the sort of the premises-based manufacturers, and sometimes they're one and the same. But all that's happening and is true as well in the cloud, and so we're finding that as well, and, you know, partnering up with some very good cloud companies as well.
Yeah, and the cloud is helping to introduce a lot of innovation to the marketplace. And it, whether it's premise or cloud, you know, everything that we were both saying does apply.
And Donna, that was all that I had as far as the questions go. So again, we want to thank you for your time, and want to thank everyone on the line for their time. Our contact information is there if you want to reach out to Donna to engage her for her services, which are many. Her information is there, and you can certainly also visit her website at dmgconsult.com, or you can reach out to me directly and I'll get you in touch with her. And certainly if you have any questions about real-time performance management and what we can do to help, please reach out to me. And I will be sending a link to the recording if you'd like to listen to it again or share it, and as well as the today's slides. So once again, thank you everyone for joining, and we hope you found this valuable, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.